Hey everyone, it's me, Poison Waters, coming to you live from Metro East Community Media in beautiful Gresham, Oregon. We're here with How to Be an Anti-Racist, an evening of art and conversation. It's so good to be with you all tonight. 2,500 people registered for this event, a testament to the urgency of the topic. Tonight, we have two incredible conversations happening. First, 30 minutes with 5 amazing artists curated by local social justice arts organization, Boom Arts. Second, an hour with 2 amazing thinkers and doers whom we all have a lot to learn from. Portland City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty and author and academic Professor Ibram X. Kendi. What a gift for us to witness them in this conversation with each other. I'd like to thank 3 of our amazing sponsors for coming in tonight and helping us with this fabulous program: Care Oregon, KeyBank, and Wells Fargo. Now listen, I mentioned Boom Arts. Do you know who Boom Arts is? They are amazing. If you don't know this powerhouse of a local theater company, you'll for sure want to look them up. Social justice through live theater? What could be better? This event, as a reminder, is not a fundraiser, but of course, will never turn down financial support. Tonight, Human Solutions is splitting any contributions 50-50 with local grassroots partner Beyond Black. So any amount given until midnight tonight will be shared. Now this is what power and resource sharing looks like. We're live tweeting tonight, so be sure to follow us there at human_solutions with the hashtag BeAntiracistPDX. Before we get tonight's exciting event underway, it is essential that we stop and reflect a moment on the history of the place you are viewing from tonight. Most of us are here in Oregon, but not all of you. If you are not, we invite you to find out, if you haven't already, who came before you there where you are, where they are now, and why. For those who are local, what we now call Portland, Oregon and Multnomah County are the unceded lands of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, and Cowlitz bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. Today, people from these bands have become part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, as well as the Chinook and Cowlitz Nation in Washington State. Portland, Oregon has the 9th largest urban Native American population in the United States, with over 380 federally recognized tribes. We recognize and acknowledge that our use of the land is a direct result of genocide and colonialism, and that still impacts Indigenous and Native communities today. Recognizing and acknowledging past injustices is an important part of our work becoming anti-racists.
It's time Hello, my name is Adam McKinney, and I'm the co-director of DNA Works, an arts and service organization committed to healing through the arts and dialogue. What you'll see today is 2 excerpts from Hamapa the Map Dance on Film, in which I have been going back to the locations of my ancestors and dancing there. In Box, I dance in 2 locations, Ouida, Benin, and Lewistown, Montana, and in McKinney, Forest City, Arkansas, and St. Louis, Missouri. I hope you enjoy. I was given my name, first man of day and molded into the spirit of 2, of both man and woman. I am eagle dancer, screeching from the sky, whole and full and all and not half anything, but 2, spirit. I am medicine person, orator, and keeper of sacred songs, historian, storyteller, leader, and peacekeeper. I name myself now in this place, Red Earth. And we are of the same blood, our chromosomes commingling, spiraling, moving, spinning. My great-great-grandfather, Jackson Davis, was born around 1870 in Mississippi. He was a sharecropper, and according to my aunties, bore the family name of his father's father, Jefferson Davis, the leader of the Confederacy. My great-grandmother, Sophia Davis, was the eldest daughter of Jackson Davis and Emmylou Dismuke. Mama was born in 1894 in Meridian, Mississippi, and she worked in the home while her younger siblings worked in the fields. My great-grandfather, Henry Thomas Daly, was born in 1888 in Macon, Mississippi. Papa laid asphalt for a living and sold firewood and coal as fuel in the winters. In 1953, he bought his first new car, a red Chevy pickup truck. He was 65 years old. My grandmother, Cora Beatrice Daly, was born in 1918 in St. Louis, Missouri. Ma was a published poet and had 9 children.
With death slushing the streets of cobblestones, sliding down dimly lighted back byways, moving within the portals. The cries of infant males were stilled. The lives of firstborn sons were blotted out, where dwellers were unworthy of the bloody brush.
And she ran north
away from my grandfather who was so pissed off that he once bit someone's nose off. My grandfather, Franklin McKinney, was born right here in Forest City, Arkansas in 1910. He worked for a slaughterhouse and for Liggett and Myers, a tobacco company. He was laid off because he began to make too much money. My father, Gerald McKinney, was born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1941. He began working at the age of 8 selling sticks and only recently stopped working at the age of 69. And then there's me. I am the map, the quilt, and the tablecloth of those who have come before me.
Hi, my name is Nikki Nicholson Klingerman, and I'll be doing 2 poems today. The first, Fairness, will deal with the biblical principle about turning the other cheek. And the second is called Don't Take It Personal, which deals with one of the principles of the 4 agreements. And both are dealing with how this plays out in systems of oppression. Why should I be fair to you? You are not fair to me. Be nice to white people. Forgive white people, for they know not what they do. If they want your coat, give them your shirt too. If they ask you to take them a mile, take them too. Turn the other cheek. Don't make the whole world one-eyed and toothless. Just let them do that to you. Be a punching bag for their own fear and ignorance. Help right their wrongs, help change their aim. Let them feel like they're saving us so they can post pictures on Facebook surrounded by smiling black and brown faces. My God, why have you forsaken me? Telling me to let them take, and wait upon the Lord? Telling me, peace be with you. What peace is you talking about? Because all I got is the peace that leaves me in pieces. Throw my anger at God, my revenge and shame, my self-hatred and hair I can't tame, balled up and a cut off fist. Black power never felt so good, cut off from the rest of the world. And all I'm left with is my own nakedness. A sore cheek, one eye, no teeth, and now a bleeding stump. When you talk over me, I won't take it personal. When you interrupt me in meetings, then immediately reject my idea, I won't take it personal. When you expect me to move on the sidewalk and I don't, you run into me, then get mad, I won't take it personal. When you hold your breath as I sit next to you on the bus, I won't take it personal. When you touch my hair without asking, I won't take it personal. When you say, I wish I was black like you. After trying to scrape my color off, I won't take it personal. When you leave death threats in my brother's locker and wait for him in alleys behind the school, I won't take it personal. But when karma comes a calling and I burn this system to the ground, don't take it personal.
This is after the tears harden, after the bodies stiffen, after the skies darken, after the air thickens, after the birds give in to darkness. This is after the city chooses to protect white privilege, after the helicopters deafen our hearts, after the national armies fill up our streets, after the fires turn into ashes, property value measured against the value of black being. This is after the protest signs are thrown away, after the streets go back to silencing black pain, after the crowds go back to their comfortable suburban homes, after the suburbans get tired of taking selfies of black pain as souvenirs. This is after our politicians get tired of touring our city's growing homeless slums. This is after the demands for justice are turned into another trends for capitalism. This is after the black artist's body aches from endlessly giving healing in the moment. This is after the news moves on to the next hashtag atrocities. This is after another black woman is viciously murdered and barely gets any attention. This is after the earth swallows another black mother's endless anguish. This is after the sun blinds us with painful truth. This is after the ancestors cover the skies with endless rage. This is after the rain comes down as timeless curses. This is after another black kid closes the casket to their loved one. This is after.
One, this is not a Facebook rant. People in positions of authority, listen up. Don't speak over me. Listen. The average American, the silent majority, if you voted for I can't even say his name. Listen up. Looking down your nose at those of us weighed down by the injustice of a criminal justice system that works unjustly is not just. Does not justly represent black men, brown men, impoverished citizens who cannot afford the best counsel corporations can afford. When did us versus them justice, just us versus them, become corporations versus men? When did it become impossible to get justice as a little man? A common man, David versus Goliath man, never mind any kind of woman man? We're not going to win. System rigged, deck stacked against us, man. There is no denying we dying. Behind bars, in police cars, in the streets, cops' knees in our backs yelling, we can't breathe, hands up. Why you stopping me? Please don't shoot. What did I do? We are dying. Lying in pools of blood for hours while cops, cowards, planting guns to justify their bias with departmentally backed lies. Congratulatory high fives, internal reviews, walls that bleed blue, a no snitching policy that means their silence is more valuable than the truth, our truth. The system is broken, a token for your consideration. Officially sanctioned, governmentally sanctioned, presidentially sanctioned homicide. The government lies, check the historical ties, trace the lineage of the lies directly back to the founding white guys. They divide and conquer, separate and attack, spew alternative facts to distract us from the truth. But listen close, run that back. We are dying. We are dying in modern day detention camps. Let's be real, concentration camps at the borders. People desperate for a better life, criminalized and stripped of their rights for having the courage to flee the instability perpetrated by American foreign policy. Refugees fleeing violence, just trying to get by and survive, give their kids a better life. ICE swoops in and locks them up. Private prisons making big bucks. Kids and babies living in squalor, ripped away from their mothers and fathers. The corporations congratulate each other. Another day in service of the almighty dollar. The system is broken, a token for your consideration. We are dying. 2. The answer is not a sign in your front yard. Behind bars, in police cars, in the streets, cops' knees on our backs, yelling, we can't breathe, hands up, why you stopping me? What did I do? Please don't shoot. We are dying. Lying in pools of blood for hours while the cops, cowards, planting guns to justify their bias with departmentally backed lies. Congratulatory high fives, internal reviews, walls that bleed blue. None of this is new. We are dying. 3. This is not a performative act of wokeness. Malcolm said the gifts of the Constitution weren't meant for us. Citizenry was an illusion never meant to be gifted to us. No justice, no peace. The American dream is a Ponzi scheme, never meant to trickle downstream from the ruling elite to you and me. No justice, no peace. It's just us speaking up to end the injustice we see that threatens our shared humanity. None of us are free if we can't all love openly. No justice, no peace. The American dream is a Ponzi scheme, never meant to trickle downstream from the ruling elite to you and me. The doctrine, a concoction to distract the huddled masses. But we will not take your lashes. No justice, no peace. It's just you and me, whether you look like them or you look like me. The American dream is a Ponzi scheme. It's never meant to trickle downstream from the ruling elite to you and me. They never meant for any of us to be free. The legacy of our ancestry, stolen from our homeland, brought in bondage to this land, from slavery to Jim Crow, the fear of black upward mobility continued to grow, to criminalizing our fight for civil rights, so they could lock us behind bars or shoot us from cop cars and call their implicit bias justified. No justice, no peace, no more racist police. The legacy of our shared ancestry is that the powers that be, the founding fathers, never meant for any of us to be free. No more politicians bearing witness to the wrong side of history, straying from morality, denying their humanity, preserving the fragility of their own white male insecurity, clinging to the bullshit myth that the wealthy elite deserve more than the poor, hiding behind dog whistle phrases, lazy coded messaging, inflaming the race-based hate of the silent majority, other white males frustrated by their own lack of authority. No more politicians who never actually listen to what the people want. No more politicians on missions of emphasizing, aggrandizing, demonizing our supposed difference. They keep us at war with each other over who has been the most mistreated. so that we don't notice their greed, egregious misdeeds, where this is all going to lead. Their phallic need for unlimited, unchecked power. That all these active shooters have white supremacy creeds. That guy, 45, can't even fucking read. That they all force feed their talking points to people who already agree. That responsible journalism has officially died, along with common sense. This is my plea for a return to sanity. Wear a fucking mask. The system is broken, a token for your consideration. Let's rise up and build a new nation based on the foundation of our shared humanity, one that actually works to uplift and empower everybody. Choosing love over hate, let's repatriate justice, equality, and peace. Let's burn down the motherfucking patriarchy. No justice, no peace.
Wow, I hope you all enjoy those incredible performances as much as I did. Thank you so much, Boom Arts, and those amazing artists for sharing your words and music. If you would like to learn more about any or all of them, please visit boomarts.org. And be sure to get on their mailing list so you can enjoy their upcoming season. Local arts organizations need our support now more than ever, right now, tonight. Next up is tonight's feature, I apologize, an incredible conversation with two amazing people whom I know will inspire each and every one of us. It might take a moment or two to switch over to our next guest. So while we're waiting for the electronics and the technology and all that to do its thing, please consider a gift to support two incredible East County organizations, Human Solutions, our host organization tonight, and Beyond Black, the grassroots partner to whom they are contributing 50% of anything you give until midnight tonight. Just go to humansolutions.org/giving. How easy is that? Now what are you waiting for? I know you have your phone right there. Welcome back, everyone. Before we get to hear from Commissioner Hardesty and Professor Kendi, our Executive Director of tonight's hosting organization, Human Solutions, Andy Miller, has a few words of welcome. But even before that, let's enjoy this short message from one of tonight's sponsors.
Hello, I'm Eric Hunter, Chief Executive Officer of CARE Oregon. We're proud to be a premier sponsor for tonight's community conversation on how to be an anti-racist with Human Solutions, Commissioner Hardesty, and Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. As most of us know, institutional racism and differential access to resources and services, including healthcare, result in significant and unacceptable health disparities within the Black community and other communities of color. In Oregon, as in much of the country, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the severity of these disparities and exposed deeply rooted historic inequities. Anti-racism means challenging and changing racist policies. We cannot be neutral. Care Oregon provides Oregon Health Plan services to over 450,000 of our friends and neighbors. Through our work, we explore innovative solutions and aggressively look for ways to lower barriers to equitable care. Our mission continues to stand strong today, strengthening communities by making healthcare work for everyone. I hope tonight's conversation on how to be an anti-racist is enlightening and challenges your assumptions. Thank you and have a great evening.
Hi, I'm Andy Miller, Executive Director of Human Solutions. Welcome to what I know will be an incredible evening during this most unique moment. Our team at Human Solutions has been doing incredible work to help our community through this time of crisis. Every day, we are working toward our shared vision of a community in which everyone has the housing and economic security they deserve. During this year of crisis, we've been busy developing and building more affordable housing. We've kept our 3 emergency shelters open and safe so neighbors experiencing homelessness can keep coming inside and find long-term housing. And we've continued to partner with struggling families so they can keep their homes, they can keep their lights on, launch a career, support their kids, and move permanently beyond a state of constant struggle. Of course, we can't take on issues like poverty and homelessness if we don't confront the centuries of white supremacy and racist policies and practices that continue to create the struggles and injustice we all see every day. Confronting racism also requires that we take a hard look in the mirror at ourselves and at who holds power in our own organization. That's why 3 years ago, Human Solutions committed to our most important work yet, becoming an anti-racist organization. Tonight's conversation is part of our journey, and we are so thankful that you, our community, have all decided to join us. We have an incredible group of people to share the stage with tonight. Our very own board vice president, Joanne Hardesty, who also serves as a Portland City Commissioner and a tireless advocate for police reform and racial justice. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, a brilliant thinker who explains what it means to be anti-racist and the essential nature of anti-racism better than anyone we've heard. We're honored to host him. We also have 5 incredible performing artists who each have a unique and inspiring way of calling us into this work, all curated by Boom Arts, a local social justice arts organization. I feel incredibly fortunate to be here with you tonight. As you know, our backdrop is a deeply troubled nation that needs desperately to change if we are going to heal. Thank you for joining Human Solutions on this most important journey. Let's all make tonight really matter for ourselves, for our community, and for our nation.
Welcome back, everyone. As I stated before, I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I've worked with Human Solutions for years and fully support their mission and the wonderful work they're doing here in East County, Portland. Also, as a Black performing artist and someone committed to racial justice, I am more than a little excited to be here with you tonight. We're live tweeting, don't forget, at human_solutions with the hashtag BeAntiracistPDX. And now, please stand by for Professor Kendi and Commissioner Hardesty.
Good evening, and welcome to a conversation with Dr. Ibram Kendi. I am Joanne Hardesty. My day job, I am the Portland City Commissioner, and in my night job, I am on the board of Human Solutions. As you may know, they provide housing for low-income families in East Portland and Gresham, and I have been privileged to serve on that board for almost 12 years, I believe. Keep trying to get off, but they do such good work. I just keep getting drawn back in. If you have moved this evening and you like what you hear, please check us out. We are on every social media outlet you can find. It is absolutely my privilege and honor to introduce my conversation, my co-conversator this evening, Dr. Ibram Kendi. And Dr. Kendi, rather than reading your bio, I'm going to ask you, what do you want us to know about you that makes you this sought-after speaker that is going everywhere talking about how to be an anti-racist? What do we need to know about you, who you are at your core?
Oh, I would rather other folks speak about me, but I would say that, you know, I'm a professor and scholar, and, you know, I'm deeply concerned about analyzing and seeing and accepting the truth. And I'm deeply concerned about ensuring that every American, no matter the color of their skin, doesn't have a knee of racism on their neck. And I'm deeply committed to building an equitable and just nation and world for us all.
Well, your book has been the go-to book in this era. We have suffered through a global pandemic. We're in the midst of an economic collapse. We here in Portland and in some other cities have seen federal forces come in and brutalize community members. We just recently had some wildfires here. And so the world is just like in chaos at the moment. What brings you hope in this moment?
Well, partly what brings me hope is the people who know the source of the chaos, and they're demonstrating and speaking out and even organizing against the source of the chaos, which is obviously racism and bigotry, which is climate change, which is the way we've organized an economy that benefits the super wealthy and not the everyday American. And I think that sort of gives me hope, because I would be hopeless if there was chaos and people were just taking it as is.
Right.
But the fact that folks are resisting gives me hope.
Well, I am an optimist by gene pool. But let me tell you, I am very optimistic about what we're going to build coming out of where we are now. Because I think we have an opportunity, probably the first one we've had this century, to really rebuild institutions to be more equitable. And Dr. Kendi, you are very soft-spoken, and I'm not. But unfortunately,
It's okay.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. And so, for me, as a member of the City Council, I've been able to utilize the energy on the street to make real policy changes. And in my lifetime of advocacy, we've only tinkered around the edges. So I do have a lot of hope about where we're headed. I have another question for you. I'm sure that your book has been received by some as, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this my whole life. I also suspect that some people are pushing back on your narrative about being an anti-racist and actually just about racism and the fact that it exists. How have you handled that criticism, and how do you respond to the criticism that you've received from your book?
So I think there's been constructive criticism, and you know, the next time that I write a book on racism or anti-racism, you know, I plan for that to sort of learn from that constructive criticism.
Right.
And then there is the destructive criticism.
Right.
And typically the destructive criticism misrepresents what I'm saying.
Yes.
And then attacks their own misrepresentation.
Yes.
And then, you know, circulates that, and people are like, whoa, that's what this dude said in this book? Oh, I don't, you know, I don't like that, even though I never actually said that.
Or they read the book. I wonder if they even read the book, right?
Well, and you know, one of the things about nonfiction is people believe somehow that they can critique a nonfiction book that they haven't read.
Yeah.
You know, for novels, folks recognize they probably should read it, you know, before they offer an opinion. But for whatever reason, with nonfiction,
Right.
you know, people believe that they can just critique a book that they haven't read.
Yes.
And so I do not respond to people who misrepresent my work and who attack their own misrepresentation. I don't respond to people who critique my work when they clearly haven't read my work.
Right.
And I don't respond, obviously, to people who are trying to discredit and demonize
That's right.
me because they benefit from a nation where people are addicted to racist ideas.
Yes. Well, good for you. It takes a thick skin sometimes to actually allow that to roll off and not take it as personal, right? As the first Black woman on Portland City Council, I can certainly share that I am not everybody's idea of what a city commissioner should look like, right, or act like, or talk like, right, or wear their hair like, for that example. But guess what? They have to get over it because that's not my problem. That's somebody else's problem, right? Yeah. It's interesting that in this period of time, I guess the good news. The good news is that for the first time in my lived experience, we have people of goodwill who are truly trying to understand how to embrace anti-racist principles. And I love the simplicity of your examples in your book, because for example, so one thing that I have said for decades is that Black people can't be racist, right? Because racism is about power, right, and power dynamics. And so as soon as I opened your book, almost immediately I see this term that you say, no, Black people can be racist, right? And before I knew I was going to talk to you, I was like, well, I'm going to have to talk to him about that, right? So we were meant to have this conversation. So please tell me how your definition of racism says that anyone of any race can be racism. Please share how you come to that perspective.
Well, one thing I didn't do in the book explicitly, and you know, was I did not talk about how we, and when I say we, myself included, tend to use the term racism with an M and racist with a T almost interchangeably.
Yes.
And I think it's critically important for us to not use them interchangeably. And so if we talk about racism with an M, racism is inherently systemic. If we're talking about racist with a T, racist is inherently individual. And so so then when we're talking about racism, the question is Black people as a group When we're talking about racist, the question is a black individual. So I think with racism, I would argue that black people as a group, generally speaking, have been actually engaged in anti-racism. That black people historically and even currently, generally speaking, have supported anti-racist policies that have the capacity to lead to racial equity and are substantiating those racist policies by expressing anti-racist ideas. So for me, I wouldn't argue that black people as a group can't be practicing racism. What I would argue is black people as a group have historically been practicing anti-racism. But then it's different when it comes to an individual. So I think that when we think about an individual, we're not talking about systemic power.
That's right.
Because that's a conversation about racism, since that's systemic. When we're talking about an individual, we're talking about an individual's power. So an individual has the power to resist. An individual has the power to, if they're in a policy-making position, to use their policy-making power to support anti-racist policies. And you have individuals who are black, like yourself, who are using your power to support anti-racist policies. And then you have other individuals who are black, who are in policy-making positions, who are using their power to let the killers of Breonna Taylor go free.
That's right.
And then why are they doing that?
Right.
Because they're looking to get on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes.
Or they're looking to one day replace Mitch McConnell as senator. And so the idea that I'm sorry?
I said Clarence Thomas.
Oh, Clarence Thomas, yeah. And so the idea that there's no individuals who are black who have any sort of policy-making power is just not true.
Right.
And to also say that every single individual person does not have the power to resist. And some of those people who are black, who are white, who are native, are using their own individual power to resist racism, and others are using their own individual power to resist the victims of racism.
Right.
I think, again, so I think we should distinguish racism, which is systemic, from racist, which is individual.
Oh, I am not going to argue with you. That is an excellent explanation. So I stand corrected. I will make sure that I use the M or the T in the appropriate spot. But I love your passion talking about that, because I live in a state where we traditionally, let me just say I live in a city where traditionally nobody that's not liberal, progressive, inclusive could ever get elected, right? Yet 30 years of record keeping show Native Americans at the bottom of every social determinant of health, African Americans at the bottom, on top of them, and then Latinos right on top of them. But every institution elects people who are making sure that there's equality and opportunity available for all. How did we get it so wrong?
Well, I think the whole idea that connects racist and even not racist with identity not only connects it with, racial identity, but also political identity. So you have liberals who are white who say, "Oh, I'm liberal, so I can't be racist."
Right. Right.
Or I live in, I'm a liberal white person in Portland.
Right.
So of course I can't be racist.
Right.
The real racists are those folks in Portland, Maine, or the real racists are those folks in Mississippi.
Yes.
We're not racist. We can't be racist here.
Yes.
And so I think what we have to first and foremost do is separate the term from identity. And then even region. So it has nothing to do with anything about, what political party you're in, where you live, who you love, who your friends are. None of these things matter. What matters is what are the effects of your policies?
Yes. Yes.
Are they leading to racial inequity or equity?
Right.
That's the question.
Right. Oh, it's a great question. And one I asked for a lot of years before I was elected to the city council. Let me just say that I was born during the height of the civil rights movement. And I was young during the 60s when every night on the evening news, people that looked like me were being brutalized by police with police dogs and water hoses and anything else they could find to beat the daylights out of us, right? And so growing up in that environment with a dad from the Deep South and a mom from Baltimore, Maryland, every night at the dinner table, we had a conversation about that. And of course, we thought we'd won, right? We'd won equality during that time. But what I have seen worldwide since the Black Lives Matters movement has exploded, because there's some that say it just started and it's been going on for a long, long time. But what I've seen, I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Because here we are 120 plus days into standing up around George Floyd's death. As a black man, can you tell me just what has the impact been on you as an individual, just seeing that video and just seeing the international outcry and demand for justice?
So, I mean, I think like other black men, like other certainly black women, I think for anyone who has the ability to step into the souls of black people, I think it was just horrific, to see what happened to George Floyd, and it, obviously I think it was one of the most horrific things that any of us have ever seen, and the idea that murder could be conducted by somebody who is legally charged with protecting life.
Yes. Yes.
That contradiction.
Yes.
Combined with not only was, and I think there's so many elements to it. Not only did you have, an officer kneeing the guy in his neck, but you also had other officers holding the rest of his body down.
Yes.
And then you had another officer who was keeping people back who were trying to save his life, right?
Yes.
And so I think the totality of that all, I think for so many people around the world, the obviousness of and the brutality of police violence and racism, was just extremely stark. And I think that for those people who were in denial, it was hard to deny it,
Yes.
to deny racism after watching that video. And so I think so they opened up, combined with folk who had known this was the case all along, who just became enraged. And I think that really came together and led to this wave of demonstrations. And I think we cannot state enough that these demonstrations this spring and summer were the largest series of demonstrations in American history.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that, because there's no easy answer to that question. Because for myself, I have been working on police reform in this community for 30 years, and I can tell you that that was not the only time I saw inhumanity against a black person at the hands of people sworn to protect and serve them. And in fact, I have cried with many family members who've lost loved ones at the hands of the police. And I absolutely agree with you. All of a sudden, people who expect when they call the police, they'll show up, they'll be officer friendly, they will solve their problem, and off they'll go. Now have a totally different view that they had not been afforded. And I don't know about where you live, but here in Portland, the continued police violence when people are still protesting every night against police violence has just been totally outrageous. And now it's moving into federal territory where we've got federal people telling us what the police can and cannot do, and that's why they want to federalize them until the end of the year. And those of us in Portland are just not going to put up with that. We have a police force we can control. They should not be on the street and won't be on the street. So this is playing out continuously in all sorts of ways. In Portland and all over the country. I think we were a testing ground to see if they could intimidate us to go home and not protest with the federal troops. I think we're also continuing to be a testing ground around the general election. And I have to say, if I've had any fear through this process, has been the fear of voter suppression, especially in places where we still have places in this country where Black people stand in line for 6, 8, 10 hours to exercise their right to vote. And we know that this administration has made it so much harder for people to exercise that right. What's giving you fear in this moment?
I agree. I mean, the story of the 2020 election will be voter suppression. And especially when you have a president who made it clear on the debate stage last night, or the other night, I'm sorry, that he's not really trying to attract voters.
No.
So when you have a candidate, it's clear that they're not trying to attract any more voters.
Right. They got
they're trying to. And then they also realize that they're losing in the polls.
Yes.
There's only one way to potentially win, and that's suppress the votes of your political opponent.
That's right.
And I think that's what he's seeking to do. And he's probably going to seek to suppress as many votes as possible. It just broke today in Texas that because of the number of people requesting mail-in ballots in Texas, the governor decided that he was only going to allow one polling station, one drop-off place in every county in the entire state. Obviously, in the entire state of Texas.
Yeah, people got to know how big Texas is, right? I mean, Texas.
And I think it's actually, what I meant is, so every county in Texas will only have one polling station. So when you have a county like Houston, which is several million people, have one polling station, it's different than when a county has 300 people, right? And obviously, Black and brown people are disproportionately in the massive counties.
That's right.
And so it's a way to suppress sort of votes, because they know that if they lose Texas, it's game over. The Republicans will never win the U.S. presidency again.
That's right.
And the American people would have spoken and would have said that. And so instead, they're going to try every which way to use their power to suppress votes and then call that democracy.
Right. Oh, yes, like picking up the post office drop boxes, right, off the sidewalks all over the country, right, in secret, right. But some of his voters, I mean, rural voters depend on access to a mailbox, right? He's just figuring, I'll just stop everybody, as many people as I can. That keeps me up at night. So I have a question about how can we ensure that anti-racist work supports transgender, disabled, deaf people of color? Through most of Portland's protests have been nonviolent, there have been minor episodes which have attracted alt-right to come to instigate violence. That sounds like that's two questions. The first one, how do we ensure that anti-racist work supports transgender, disabled, and deaf people of color?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, when people view Black people as essentially cisgendered. What they're essentially stating is the only people, they're only ending up thereby fighting against a racism that's affecting cisgender black people. So they're leaving out transgender people. If when people think about black people, they only think about able-bodied black people,
Yes.
then they're simultaneously going to leave out the ways in which disabled black people, are facing sort of racism. And then if people don't recognize the ways in which racism intersects with ableism and transphobia, that then results in, for instance, even when people do think about, so like, when people sort of think of transgender black women, they see them as a greater threat than white transgender women, which is why they're dying and being killed and murdered, at higher rates.
Yes.
And then even when people sort of see and experience black disabled people, in their mind, those aren't people who have a disability, those are just black people. So they don't receive the type of support that a white sort of disabled person receives because of this sort of confluence of ableism and even racism.
That was excellent, and I absolutely agree. I mean, if you say you're organizing the community and you don't reach out to every segment of the community to engage them, then all you're doing is just speaking to the closest folks to you and not being intentional about who's at the table. I remember being at those tables, right? So it's like I was the black person, and so what do you think black people think about this? And, and it used to make me batty. Say, I don't know. Who's the white guy in Northwest that can tell me what white people think about this issue? Because I certainly can't speak for the whole race. But it's an assumption that's made because of people's unwillingness to do the hard work. To engage communities that are radically different than their own.
Exactly.
So, to tell us, who did you write this particular book for? When you were sitting down to write this book, we certainly weren't in all the crises we're in at the moment. What were you? Why? What was the motivation to sit and write this book?
So I think people asked for it. So my previous book was a narrative history of racist ideas in America. It's called Stand from the Beginning. And I also chronicled the history of anti-racist ideas and really showed that the contrast wasn't between racist and not racist ideas. It was between racist and anti-racist ideas.
Yes.
And so when I would speak on that book, I would urge people to adopt anti-racist ideas.
Right.
And people would be like, what are you talking about? I'm not racist. What does it mean to be anti-racist? And that's really what caused me to write this book.
That makes perfect sense. And I think it is. I think it's hard. It was hard. I'm going to say. Hopefully, the world's eyes have been open. It was hard for people to look at facts. That I'll give you a great example. So in Portland, we used to have what was called the Gang Enforcement Team, and for 14 years solid. They would give an annual report to the city council, and there were 28 officers, and all they did was ride around looking for gang members, right? And they didn't answer calls, they didn't back up their colleagues, all they did was do this specialized gang force. But every year when they reported to the city council, over 50% of their stops were of black people. Now, I live in a city with a 6% black population, right? And so I would go to city council every year and I would go, well, do the math. This doesn't make sense, right? That would mean that every black person in the city of Portland is affiliated in some way, shape, or form with gang activity. And that just doesn't make sense. Even if you believe the police, who say 12 to 24 is the age that people are involved in gang activity, we don't have enough 12 to 24-year-olds to justify 28 people all day, every day, riding around looking for gang members. Guess what happened when I got to the city council?
What happened?
All of a sudden, the unit had a new name. It was now called the Gun Violence Reduction Team. It had the same officers, no new training, and all of a sudden, they couldn't give data because it was a brand new unit, right? But guess what? Their stops are absolutely matching up with the stops that they did with the gang enforcement team. But you'll love this. I cut that as part of the budget process after the protest started. I tried to cut it 3 times before, and I could never get the votes to cut it. But now it's gone. And so July 1st was when the program ended. By mid-July, new report came out that said gun violence had spiked in Portland. The police said, see, you shouldn't have cut that gun violence reduction team. You got to put it back together. And my response was, well, how in 2 weeks could we have any kind of data that actually you can tie it back to the gun violence reduction team? I tell you that story because in my adult life, the police have led the narrative of who the criminals were, where crime was happening, and how much resources they need to solve the problem.
Yeah.
First time in my life, the community is now not buying it, right?
Yeah.
Are you having that same experience?
Well, what's fascinating is the first essay I ever wrote for The Atlantic was essentially looking at and comparing, quote, urban street gangs
Right.
to white male, primarily,
Yes.
fraternities.
Yes.
And the reason why is because, yeah, so I actually sort of pulled some data and found that, so women on college campuses are far and away more likely to be victims of violence, if you consider sexual assault to be violence,
Right.
than even urban people in the mid-90s at the height of violent crime.
Right.
And then we know, according to studies, that if you're in a gang, you're 3 times more likely to engage in violent crime.
Yes.
We also know that if you're in a fraternity, you're 3 times more likely to actually engage in sexual assault.
Ooh.
So what's fascinating is that in many ways you have fraternities
Right.
on college campuses
Yes.
who are behind more violence per capita
Yes.
than gangs in urban areas. But there's no police unit
Right.
that's especially seeking to, police them and reduce the levels of sexual assault on college campuses. And when they do that, even though they're 18, 19, 22 years old, the response from society is, well, they made a mistake. Let's not ruin their lives.
They're a kid, right? What do they know,
Yeah.
right?
So, but when a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old black boy
Yes.
is in a gang or engaged in a violent crime, suddenly we want to put him away for the rest of his life.
That's right.
Right? A boy, a 15-year-old should not get a second chance, but a 22-year-old college student, let's not, wreck their life. And I sort of wanted to draw that sort of contrast out because it really shows the level of racism
Yes.
in our society that's actually not based in data. And as you also know, many other cities have these drug enforcement units,
Yes. Yes.
and they primarily operate in black and brown and poor communities,
Yes.
even though study after study shows that the races consume and sell drugs at similar rates. And
Yes.
indeed, some studies show that white people are more likely
That's
to
right.
sell and consume drugs.
Yes.
And of course, wherever the drug enforcement units are, that's where the arrests are going to be.
That's right.
So then it's going to be a justifier. Well, we're arresting more people there. Of course, because that's where you are.
That's right, right.
Anyway, don't get me started.
Yeah, no, you and it's clear you and I have had this conversation over some time, right? And I will say that the white supremacists who have made their home in the Pacific Northwest were never considered a gang, and they weren't tracked at all by the Portland gang enforcement team. So I always pointed that out as well. What about the white supremacists? What about the white nationalists? And apparently they just didn't rise to the level of needing a specialized unit, right, to address their criminal behavior.
And both Homeland Security and the FBI have stated, and many policing forces have stated, that white supremacist organizations are the greatest domestic terrorist threat of our time.
Yes, yes.
And so, but I don't know of a single,
City. Right.
City that has a unit that is seeking to protect their citizens from these terrorists.
No, me either. Me either. And as you may have read or seen on the news, they like to come to Portland and just beat up on Black Lives Matter protests and get police escorts to do whatever it is they want to do. But luckily I live in a city where the counter protesters are always 4 times the white supremacists. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to live in a city where that is so. Let's see. We're coming down to the wire here. Looks like we got about 9 minutes left before we'll wrap up the program. But I want to thank you. You just came out with a workbook that is a companion to how to be an anti-racist. And thank you for that, because I think a workbook is really critical. Now, I haven't purchased it yet, but I will. Can you tell me a bit about the workbook and why you decided to do the companion?
So it was almost similar to how to be an anti-racist, in that, I tried to respond to what folks are asking for. And so I think, people who were reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, or even weren't reading it, and wanted something very tangible that they can use to really embark on their own journey to be anti-racist, something that they can use to really reflect on their racial worldview, to really seek to think deeply about how they can, transform themselves and be anti-racist, something that was very tangible and practical. And so that's what folks were asking for. How do I take that next step? And so I decided to produce, it's called Be Anti-Racist, a journal of awareness, reflection, and action.
I love it. I love it because very similar to Michelle Alexander when she wrote The New Jim Crow. What I loved about her book was that she was like, look, I don't have the solution, but hey, I'm just going to tell you what I found, right? This is what I found. I'm not giving you the answer to this quiz. You got to do that work on your own. And just like that book, I think that was an awakening for some folks who had never connected the dots about how our criminal justice system, and some would say injustice system, operates. And this book is for an individual. How do we create a collective around being an anti-racist? And can you be anti-racism? Can you create an anti-racism organization? And if so, does that workbook help us get there?
Yeah, to me, my work that allows people to free themselves of what's preventing them or stopping them or holding them back from being a part of a larger collective struggle. And because really I want, and I've been urging people to transform themselves so that they can join the rest of us and transform society. So it's not just about, it has really, is less to do with us as individuals and more to do with being a part of this larger anti-racist struggle.
Yes. Are you familiar with an organization called SURGE, Standing Up for Racial Justice?
I've heard of it, yeah.
And so it's been really active in Portland. And what I appreciate is it actually makes white people do months of training before they're allowed to be co-conspirators with black organizations or black movements that are or any movement led by people that aren't white. And what I love about that is they demand that people take the time to educate themselves. As we've seen play out in Portland, sometimes you may go to a Black Lives Matters protest and not see any black people. And so I suspect people in other parts of the country get a little confused by that. But I hope it's because they are educating themselves about not just what they've witnessed around the protests, but what black people have been saying since we created policing in this country, that there are two systems and it works one way if you are white and privileged, and it works another way if you are black and under-resourced. So you also just wrote a new book that I'm excited about, and I promised myself not to buy it until I'd finished the book I had, because I get that way, right? I start seeing stuff and I'm like, oh, I gotta read that, and I just start buying them and I end up with 10 books I haven't read yet. But I'm happy to say not only did I read yours, I've actually made significant notes because it is a research a book that provides some factual information I can share with my colleagues. Tell me the name of your latest book. Not the workshop, but you have another book, right, that just came out?
So are you talking?
Quite a lot.
Are you talking about 400 Souls? Or?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So 400 Souls is the subtitle is a community history of African America, 1619 to 2019, and it was I co-edited it with Keisha Blaine, and essentially what we did was we put together a community of 90 writers, 80 of which wrote 5 years of African American history,
wow,
amounting to 400 years.
Wow.
And then 10 poets each wrote poems based on 40 years of African American history. And so, it's almost like a choir sort of coming together and singing this history. And obviously, as you know, community has been such a central idea among black folks, and black folks are very diverse and very different, and so we really wanted to really show not only the community but that diversity of thought, but that collective sort of power to really write the 400-year history of African Americans. And we have just an incredible group of folks. So, Nicole Hannah-Jones leads off with writing on 1619 to 1624, and the last writer in the volume, of course, is Alicia Garza, who's writing from 2014 to 2019, the period of Black Lives Matter. And so, we just have an incredible group of folks who came together to write this.
Well, I'm certainly going to have to get it. I'm just going to have to put it on the stack of when I ever get a vacation, I will make that happen. Dr. Ibram Kendi, it has been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. And I know this won't be the last conversation that we have because again, of our partnership with Boston University and the center that you're a part of, I expect that we're going to be having many more conversations. But for our listeners tonight, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've been moved tonight and you've been moved by the story of Human Solutions, please reach out. And if you can contribute something that helps us continue to provide for low-income families in East Portland and Gresham, as we know, coming out of this pandemic, it's going to be a lot worse before it gets better. But together, we can all build a much more equitable city, state, country. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that. And Dr. Kendi is certainly a part of that. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your voice. and thank you for using it in such a way that inspires others to take action. After they read, they take action. Thank you so much, and hopefully you have a fabulous evening. And thank your family for allowing us to take you away for a little bit, especially since it's 11 o'clock at night your time. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, you take care, Joanne. Take care.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was amazing. That's a lot to think about. It's so fantastic. Thank you once again to both Commissioner Hardesty and Professor Kendi. That was so good. I'm just so moved. Thank you both for your incredible work. I'm inspired about what we can all do to become anti-racist and create a more just society here in Multnomah County as well as across the nation. Oh, I still have to remind you one more time. Thank you, first of all, for all the donors that have been coming in, and you still have time to donate. Remember, we are sharing 50% of tonight's donations through midnight that are being donated to humansolutions.org/giving with the fabulous folks at Beyond Black. Again, that's humansolutions.org/giving. And to know a little bit more about our friends at Beyond Black, let's take a look.
Hi, I am Jermaine Flintroy, one of the founders of Beyond Black and the Health and Wellness Director.
Hi, I'm Latasha Carter, the Executive Admin of Beyond Black.
Beyond Black is a Black-led and serving community-developed corporation. Our goal is to empower our community by delivering culturally responsive service and programming to East County.
As we continue to face the challenges of 2020, our work centers holistic health and healing, economic recovery, and housing stability through a series of workshops, engagement, and community events.
For future information or to get involved, please contact us at
info@beyondblackcdc.org or 971-804-8889. You can also find us on
Facebook,
Instagram,
Beyond Black CDC.
Oh my gosh, they are so amazing. I can't wait to work with this group in the future and learn more about all the great work they're doing out here in East County, Portland. I hope you've all had a wonderful evening and that you are inspired to keep fighting every day for racial justice and healing. And remember, whatever you contribute tonight will support both Human Solutions and Beyond Black as they work here in East Multnomah County to ensure that every one of us has what we need to thrive. One last time, the link to give is humansolutions.org/giving. You know what to do next. On behalf of Human Solutions, I'm Poison Waters, and it has been my pleasure. Good night.